Hi guys, and welcome back to the Bird Photography Show with Glenn Bartley.
Hello.
And me, Jan Wegener.
We just want to say a quick thank you to everybody who's subscribed to the channel, who's left us some comments, who bought us a coffee, and especially a big thank you to you guys who have purchased and are using our Pro sets that we talked about in the last episode.
Totally, we were very happy we could help you to improve your RAW editing. And today we want to talk about a related topic because we all spend so much time in front of the computer, don't we, Glenn?
Oh, too much.
And so it's very important that we actually have the right and a fast enough computer and a good workflow on the computer with the right programs so we can use the time that we spend in front of the computer efficiently and get our tasks done quickly.
Yeah, I mean, we've all been there. You go out and you buy a new camera and you're super excited about it, and then you get home and you're like, okay, the files are bigger, the video files are way bigger, and all of a sudden you start to realize some of the shortcomings with your existing computer when things get really slow.
Like 1 minute of nice high quality 4K footage on a R5 is like 3 or 4 gigabytes, and then we're not even talking about 8K, which is a lot bigger. So that chews through your memory cards really quickly and also is really demanding on your system.
And even if you're not shooting video, I mean, think about it. Let's say you're shooting with a Sony A1, which is whatever, 50 or 60 megapixels, and can shoot 20 or 30 frames a second. You could literally be taking 2 gigabytes a second of storage. So you're gonna chew through your memory cards and you're gonna have to, have a pretty fast machine to deal with all that data. And not only that, with the new plugins like DxO, which we really enjoy for cleaning up our RAW files, and Topaz, these programs are great, but they can really benefit from a faster machine and especially a good graphics card.
Another thing that's really important to remember when it comes to your computer and the requirements onto your system is, are you going to be taking only photos and only editing photos, or are you going to do photo and video editing? Because the requirements on your system, if you do photo and video, are a lot higher than if you're just doing photos. Isn't that right, Glenn?
That is absolutely right, and that is something that I have recently become intimately familiar with. When I purchased the, I don't know if that's a bad word, whatever, the right way to say it, but when I purchased the R5, everything was fine with stills. Like, I could process my raw files, that was all fine. Obviously, it'd be great if I had a bit of a faster computer for those filters, like I said. But I tried to make like a short video with some 4K footage, not even possible. Like, my computer just literally immediately closes the program. It can't do it. So there's certainly a limit when you start getting into video editing where an older computer is just, it's probably not even possible. And even if it's possible, it's going to be no fun at all.
Yes, and that's actually the main reason why I this year upgraded my computer as well, even though my old computer was still fairly recent, done a good job with a lot of 4K video. But then with the R5, when you do some more 8K or using those H.265 codecs that are a lot more system intensive, it just started to become a real struggle to edit like a lot of 4K stuff. And so I ended up upgrading my system again, but that was actually good for you, Glenn, wasn't it? Because you're gonna get my old computer.
Isn't Jan such a nice guy? He's gonna send me his old computer parts. No, that'll be awesome. That, because your old machine would still be a big upgrade for me. So that actually will be quite awesome. And we're gonna get way more in detail about the specific specifications of some of these computers in just a few minutes. But we thought we should maybe start with some of the really common questions. People are always asking things like, should I go Mac or PC? Should I go with a desktop computer or a laptop computer? So let's start with those important questions.
When it comes to Mac versus PC, I must say I'm more of a PC guy, but now I actually use both. I use a MacBook Pro. This is the 13-inch M1 version, and I use a big powerful desktop computer at home for most of my work, and usually I've split it up that way, that I have a good powerful PC at home because I like the programs I can use there. I like that it's a little bit cheaper, but then on the road I really enjoy MacBook Pros.
Can you get by with just a laptop, or do you need a laptop and a desktop? For me, I've always preferred to have both. I really like coming home, having my computer just set up there, having my nice monitor, and then when I go in the field, I like having this nice, lightweight, very capable, great machine. It's nothing too crazy price point, but it can do what I need.
I agree. I actually like both because I think it gives you the best of both worlds. I definitely like to have a big, powerful computer at home. And one great advantage is there that I can have a lot of fast hard drives in it, much more hard drives that you can have in a laptop. And also, if I have a big, powerful system in a large case, I can really easily cool the parts. And that's probably one of the main concerns with a lot of Windows Intel laptops, that they run really hot. They have a fan going all the time. And it can happen that the parts get so hot that you're then throttling performance because all these really high-end parts get hot, and in this tiny case there's just not enough cooling available. And this is something that Apple seems to have solved really well with their new M1 chips and that whole system surrounding that chips, where oftentimes the laptop doesn't even have a fan like the MacBook Air, or it almost never turns on like in a lot of the other MacBook Pros. So that definitely seems to be another great advantage why MacBooks are becoming a really good choice when it comes to laptops.
So do you think then, Jan, that if you got like a top of the line of these new MacBook Pros, that they could actually replace your desktop computer? Is that what you're saying?
I think in terms of performance, they would probably come pretty close or might even be superior. I still like to have the setup with my desktop computer, mainly because I was just talking about it, these hard drives. I have like, I think 6 hard drives in my current computer. So I can have essentially all my photos and videos on fast SSD drives inside my computer, which means I never have to touch an external hard drive or have any slow connection when it comes to video editing, for instance, because all my video files on a really fast SSD drive, I can just open them up and they play easily in my video program. So this is something that a desktop computer can give me, but a laptop just can't give it to me to the same degree, simply because I can't put that much storage inside. For my workflow, I still have an advantage with a desktop computer, but I'm also really valuing a laptop computer in the field, especially when I'm going to be traveling more in the future, where I then need to do a lot of video editing.
But don't you think it's going to be kind of annoying having PC platform at home with your desktop and then in the field having a Mac? Like, I feel like that would really, I would be so confused and just be annoyed with these two different systems. You're not worried about that?
It is a little bit annoying, mainly because one of the main programs that I like to use on Windows to go through my RAW files fast on Image Viewer isn't available on Mac. So that was a bit difficult. I'm using Photo Mechanic now on Mac, but that's actually quite an expensive program, but it's the best alternative that I've found. Most Windows hard drives are formatted to NTFS, and that doesn't work on the Mac computer. You can't write files onto there. And so you have to format all your drives for exFAT.
Personally, I would say, in summary, the most like cost-effective solution as far as having a good, adequate computer for photo and video editing is to have a decently spec'd out, not top of the line, but a decently spec'd out desktop computer, and then to have a small, reasonably capable laptop to take with you in the field. And obviously, depending on your budget, you can throttle those budgets accordingly. What do you think?
No, I totally agree. And this is actually what I've kind of done in the past. For a while, I didn't even have a laptop. I would have a powerful desktop computer, spend a decent amount of money on that. And then in the field, I often just took a lot of memory cards with me and just had my pictures, a couple of copies of my pictures on the memory cards. But now with the video editing and me doing constant YouTube videos, 1 per week ideally, I need something in the field that can actually match the performance of my computer at home. But I think for most people, they don't really need that. Oftentimes, they only use their laptop to read like emails or download their photos, and then you really don't need a high-end machine. So then it just comes down to having a decent enough high-end machine somewhere, whether it's your desktop computer or your laptop, doesn't matter, but you want one of the two to be pretty good to have a good workflow.
Yeah, especially if you're doing high-end video work like Jan's doing. So there's no perfect solution, guys, but we'd love to hear from you. Let us know, what's your solution? What have you found that works for you? Drop us a note down in the comments, and maybe some of the other viewers will benefit from that, and you can share some of that information. I think now we actually need to look at some components and talk about what would be an actually adequate desktop computer. Okay, so when it comes to a new computer, one of the things that I absolutely love about the PC platform is not just going and buying a computer off the shelves, but actually picking the parts that you want, all the different components, ordering them, sometimes even from different shops online, getting them all, and then building the computer yourself. And you get like the best parts, the best performance at often a lower price point. And that's the way that I've always built my computers. If that's a bit intimidating though, you can also kind of do the same thing through a computer shop where you explain to them what you need or what you want, and they get the parts for you, and then they build the machine for you. One thing that probably wouldn't be recommended is to just go to like whatever big box electronics store, Best Buy or wherever part of the world you live in, and just buy something off the shelf, because those machines typically don't have the best parts. They're not like designed at all for photo or video editing, and you're just kind of not getting the best machine, the best value there.
I usually do it exactly like what Glenn has said. I'm not building the computer myself though. I'm really not an expert in that field. So I'm usually researching the parts, talk to a few people, watch a few YouTube videos, see what's kind of good, find the price range that I want to be in, and then order the parts from a shop and have the shop build it for me. And they charge me $100 extra, and that's well worth it for me. I get a computer perfectly assembled, it's running, I just plug it in, and I also don't have all that funny software installed that a shop like Best Buy usually installs. All these antivirus software that then just also kills your computer, because a lot of these programs are really not good for your computer. They're only killing your performance.
Everything slows you down.
Even just a simple program like Photoshop can really benefit from having scratch disks. So scratch disks are basically hard drives, fast hard drives that have no other purpose than being there for Photoshop to store temporary files on. So whenever it runs out of RAM, like say you have 10 photos open or you have a lot of layers, Photoshop often runs out of RAM, and then it creates a temporary file on the scratch disk that actually speeds up the process and lets you work in a good, fluent way. And the problem I see with a lot of people, and I had on my old laptop, is that there was only one little hard drive in there. So if I had a lot of files open, I installed a lot of programs, or doing a lot of things, the hard drive would suddenly be full and I couldn't do anything anymore. So having these scratch disks is actually really important to a good and fast workflow. Let's talk about a few key components that every computer needs. And of course, the heart of the computer, the processor. There's literally hundreds of different models. There's a lot of Intel ones or AMD ones. And I think the best way forward is that you research some of the latest model and then find a price point that's kind of maybe in the upper middle kind of area, because you don't really need to go for the super high-end processors that cost a lot more money but don't necessarily give you a lot more performance for what we do. So a decent middle of the range processor usually seems to have worked pretty well for me.
Second component that we definitely need is memory, or what's often called RAM in a computer. These days, I was going to say you probably should really be looking at least 32 gigabytes of memory in any kind of a new build. I think that's like your baseline, and of course you can go up from there. Another important thing, because there's a certain number of slots on your motherboard to add RAM to, and so I would definitely recommend getting a couple of bigger blocks of RAM as opposed to like for example, if you were going to get 32, don't get 4 8 gigabyte ones, get 2 16s, because again, the beauty of PC is you can always add more in later, and there's sometimes these like really good deals come up, and then you can just buy another chip and pop it in there and speed up your computer.
One thing that has become a lot more important recently, you've actually seen it in one of our recent videos as well, and that's your GPU or your graphics card. Because traditionally we would think, oh, that's only something you might need for video editing, but then we had figured out that even things like DxO Pure Raw or Topaz Denoise or all the other Topaz applications actually run significantly faster if you use the graphic card acceleration and actually run the whole process through your graphics card. So having a good graphics card has definitely become a lot more important, and in my new build especially, that was the thing I shelled out the most money for, because I really wanted a nice high-end model with a lot of VRAM, so it can handle those bigger video projects and can just help me to have a lot faster workflow in the computer. But again, if you don't do high-end video editing, you don't necessarily need to go for the top of the range $3,000 or $4,000 graphic card. You can probably find a really good model that does like 80% of the performance for like a third of the price, around the $1,000 price point.
Yeah, or even a bit less, yeah, for sure. Okay, so if you're going to have a fast graphics card and you're going to be having a powerful chip, it can generate a lot of heat. And that, as we've already talked about, can be a real problem for performance. So it's important to consider cooling down your computer, and also every computer needs a power supply. So the bigger and faster the graphics card, you need more power. You know, the more hard drives you're running, everything needs more power. So it's important to get an adequate power supply and then to have an efficient way of cooling your machine. And of course, this is why it's way easier to get great performance in a big desktop tower, because you can have a bunch of fans and stuff in there cooling it down, whereas in a little laptop, it's a lot harder to cool these components down.
The other thing, we need kind of the main hub of the computer, the motherboard. And again, there is trillions of options really. I would again go for a upper middle kind of range one, and usually when I select a motherboard, I just look for the things what I want. Do I want built-in Wi-Fi? I definitely want to make sure I have enough USB 3.2 and USB-C ports, and then I just make sure that I have enough flash memory spaces, so I can have enough NVMe SSD drives on there that help me to run my system really quickly. So my latest computer, I picked a motherboard that had 3 NVMe slots, so I could have 3 really fast SSD drives on there. So that will be my main recommendation. But even really the middle of the range motherboards do a good enough job for what we do typically.
And finally, we need to consider storage. Of course, we need somewhere to keep all of our photos and videos and everything like that. For me, again, because I haven't done a ton of video, on my current machine, all I basically have is 3 4 terabyte drives, and one of those is a backup drive. So there's really only like 2 4 terabyte drives. But let's see what Jan has in his computer. I think he might have a few more.
In my latest machine, I'm running 3 NVMe SSD drives, the really fast ones, and then 2 normal SATA SSD drives for my storage. And the main reason is that it allows me to have all the files that I need to access on fast SSD drives inside my machine. It's important to have the right storage solution and also nice and fast SSD drives inside your computer, because they really help your performance.
Okay, so now let's take a look at 2 computers, Jan's old computer, my new computer, and then we'll look at Jan's fancy computer. The chip is an i7-9700K, which of course is a couple of years old now. You could probably find something newer, but a mid-level chip. 32 gigabytes of RAM in there, and the motherboard is a Gigabyte Z390. The graphics card is an NVIDIA GTX 1660 Ti, which has 6 gigabytes of RAM, which is a nice sort of, again, mid-range, good video card for some video editing, and certainly capable of doing all the photo editing. As Jan mentioned, you need a lot of hard drives, and in this computer, he's got 3 really fast SSD drives. One of them is what Windows is installed on. One of them is sort of for general photo storage when you're just needing to access files quickly, like you download your photos on there or your videos on there, and then you can work with them right away really quickly before you archive them somewhere. And then the third one is a scratch drive, like we talked about, that can really help to speed things up when you max out your RAM usage. And then for general storage, we've got a big 6 terabyte Seagate drive on there. Look, when it comes to a case, you can literally use anything as long as it fits your components. You don't need anything fancy there. And then what you do need is an adequate power supply. While that computer is not that great for Jan's current like high-level video editing needs, it's going to be a great upgrade for me, and I'll still be able to edit 4K videos on it. It just might lag a little bit. It might be a little bit slower at certain times when you're doing certain things to the video files. But for photos, for all those DxO and Topaz, it's going to be way faster than my computer machine.
I actually edited my whole masterclass on there, which was a lot of 4K footage. So it's definitely capable. It's really just with the newer codecs of like the R5, if you do a lot of slow motion or you do a lot of Canon log editing, that H.265 codec requires your graphic card and your processor to do so much more work that it's just not as smooth anymore. But for most tasks, it's definitely a capable computer.
Okay, well, now let's look at a little bit of an upgrade to what Jan is currently using.
As I just said, this really the main reason for the upgrade was the video editing, and that's why the computer ended up costing a lot of money as well, because I really went for a pretty high-end graphic card that probably cost almost as much as the rest of the computer, and then 2 really big expensive SSD drives. But I just felt like having that faster transfer speed, like 500 to 600 megabytes a second versus 100 megabytes a second, will really help me with my workflow and the video editing. So I definitely went after a pretty high-end graphic card that is the second in the lineup. There's an RTX 3090, but that's almost double the money again. And with the cryptocurrency boom and the chip shortage, it's actually very, very hard to even get any graphic card. So I just went with what was in the shop that had enough VRAM for me to do more video editing, is fast processing. But if you want to have a good card, you could also look at the RTX 3060 or 3070 that cost a lot less money. I have 3 really fast NVMe Samsung 980 Pro drives, one terabyte one that runs Windows on it, and I don't have anything else on that drive other than my programs on Windows. So I don't have it too large. You don't need to have a 2 terabyte drive there because simply your Windows and applications won't take up that much space. And then I have 2 terabyte drives, one for working files and one for kind of overflow working files, and as a scratch disk for Photoshop and Lightroom and DaVinci, so for all those programs. So my main number one working drive is, it's just what Glenn said before. It's for downloading files, have current projects on there that you want to access really quickly and work through quicker before you archive them away. The second drive is kind of for the same purpose if I run out of space on the first one, and as the scratch disk for Photoshop. So I make sure that the second drive usually has at least 1 terabyte of free space available for all the programs.
Yeah, I mean, looking at that machine, I honestly, I would have never thought you'd need so many hard drives. But the way you describe it, it makes sense. And I think a really big take home here is it's not just about going to the store and say, here, take my money, give me a fast machine. It's actually how you set it up and how you use it can really get you like, 10, 15, 20% more performance if you set it up right with scratch disks and the right fast hard drives and using them in the right way. That's kind of, I think, a good take home for people.
And I mean, you and I edited hundreds of photos, hundreds of videos. So if we save 2 minutes on every photo and 5 minutes on every video over the course of a year, that probably adds up to an extra week of free time that we have to do other things. And I think this was the most important point you actually mentioned, that you don't have to copy this system. This system makes sense for me. I have a workflow where having this many hard drives really makes my life a lot easier, but that might not be the case for everyone. But I think for me, finding what I want, and before I actually bought it, I decided I need this. I need 3 really fast drives. I want 2 other SSD drives, and then I have all my files available and accessible really fast and easily.
Now, speaking of hard drives, because we all know it's not just one copy of your files. So you have all those drives in your computer. What are you doing to back up all those video files, and tell us about your backup system, Jan? Because for me, like I said, with just my photos and like what little video that I do, I can back up pretty much everything onto like a 4 or 5 terabyte drive.
The main thing for me is I have most of my files on the computer, but not all files. Then I have a NAS system that's attached to my network. That's like the first copy of every single file that I have, basically. So on my computer, it's like the first copy of my most important photos, my most important videos, and everything I'm kind of working on. All the other things I'm not constantly working on, they're on my NAS drive, and there's also a copy of every single file on there. So that's my backup number one. Then I have a few of these 10 terabyte Western Digital MyBook drives that act as a backup of the NAS system, like an offline backup of the NAS system. And then I have another round of those drives that act as an offsite copy that's at a friend's house.
That's super important. A lot of people think like, oh, I've got 3 copies of all my stuff and they're all in my desk. But what happens if, your house burns down or you have a flood or something like that? Then all your backups are gone. So it's super important to have an offsite backup. For me, I actually just, like, the bank that I go to is just right across the street, and I just have a safety deposit box in the bank. So I can just take my little hard drives over there and easy. I think it's safe to say there's more than one way to get the job done when it comes to building a computer. And we're certainly not saying that these exact systems are like the way you should go. We're just trying to explain the process of buying a new computer and some of the main considerations that you might want to look into when it comes to building your next computer.
Yeah, and maybe just give you a starting point or some ideas of systems that actually worked quite well for us. Because It's really overwhelming. Whenever I get started out on trying to buy a new computer, I'm like, it's impossible. You go to a shop, there's like 10,000 different processors, 1,000 different components. So having a good starting point might actually be quite helpful.
That's why I just let Jan do the hard work and then send me his computer. Okay, so that covers what you might need for your desktop computer, which, as we've said, we both really enjoy having. But what you need at home might be really different than what you need in the field. So, for example, when I bought my previous laptop, I was like, okay, the most important thing is going to be the screen. And I researched and I researched, and I found that this one particular Lenovo model had like the best screen, even better than the Apple laptops at that time. So I was like, okay, I guess that's what I'm going to go with. And it came, and it was such a brick. It was so massive. It was big, heavy. The battery stuck out the back. The power brick for it, like to charge it, because it was so big, was like this big. And it was honestly such a mistake, because the truth is, I never edit photos in the field. I basically use the laptop to cull through my photos, to do some surfing of the net, to like have documents on, watch videos. I still want something decent enough that I can flip through them and like actually like cull my images, but I did not need this monster computer in the field, and it was seriously such a mistake. I travel a lot. I go on like 5 or 6 international trips a year, and I lugged this stupid giant computer around for like 6 years. I got this sweet little baby. It weighs nothing. It's so thin and light. The little power thing for it is like this big. It literally is like, the computer and the charger is like 6 pounds lighter, which when you consider your airline carry-on limits is pretty significant. So I wouldn't try to edit 4K videos on this thing, but for my needs, it's perfect. So that's the solution that I've gone with.
And funny enough, I think I made the same mistake. Maybe we even bought the same model laptop, because I bought this Lenovo one as well. Massive computer, because it had the best screen. I think it had like a built-in calibrator as well. Or like everyone like, this is great, this is what you need for photo editing. I actually used it for photo editing in the beginning when I moved to Australia, because I didn't have any other computer here. But it almost put me off laptops, because the battery life without the charger was atrocious as well.
Yeah.
You turn it on an hour later, it's like out of battery. And a big heavy laptop is what put me off of laptops. So I actually ended up just one desktop computer, and when I traveled, I just had a lot of CF cards with me. Now with an R5, it's not as feasible anymore, because we go through so much footage and the cards are quite expensive. It's not a great option to just have 100 1 terabyte CF Express cards with you, because that costs way more than a laptop.
Pricey.
So for now, I'm having this 30-inch MacBook Pro, and I'm just using these little 2 terabyte SSD drives that are very fast. So that's my current workflow in the field. What I found for video editing, this screen is a little bit small. So that's why I'm still looking at probably a 16-inch MacBook Pro as well, that will aid me better with the video editing in the field. But for my normal workflow with photos and normal video editing, but not intensive video editing, this little laptop is great. And as you say, it's a small shape, small charging unit, easy to carry around with you, even in a small backpack. So that's definitely what I'm after in a field laptop.
Yeah, I think that's a good solution for you. And you touched on those small little SSD drives, because we talked about backing up at home. That's one thing. But when you're in the field, it's like even more important, because that's when things are probably more likely to go wrong. You know, you drop your computer, or somebody steals your computer or something like that. And for sure, when you're in the field, you're going to have multiple backups. So those small little SSDs, I think that's for sure the way to
And
go.
the good thing is, this can also go like in your shirt pocket when you're flying on the airplane.
Totally.
So even in the worst case, in an emergency, you have to jump off the airplane, you can still have this on you as well. So
You'll be dead. You'll be dead if you jump off the plane, but your photos may live on. All right, now another important consideration when you're in the field is actually the cards that you're recording your images or your video onto, because having a fast card can really speed you up and save you a lot of time.
Yeah, I mean, imagine you're out in the field, you're having a great day, you took a few thousand images, done a few 4K videos. You might have 500 gigabytes worth of things to transfer to your computer or your hard drives. And on a slower SSD card, for instance, that might take a few hours even. Whereas if you have nice and fast cards with a nice and fast card reader, that can speed up the whole process dramatically, and it might only take you like 5 or 10 minutes to transfer everything.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge difference. Like, if you've been out all day shooting in the like hot jungle, walking around, you're just exhausted, you're tired, you want to have a shower, you want to get some food, the last thing you want to do is stay up for like another 2 hours waiting for your slow cards to transfer over. So definitely fast cards and a fast card reader is a must.
Yeah, and I've recently, I think we said it before, we're recently testing these Wise Advanced memory cards, and so far I'm really impressed, especially with their new Pro cards. They're super fast, they download really fast. I get up to almost 900 megabytes per second in transfer speed with the silver cards and the card reader, so I'm pretty happy with that. We will give you our long-term review probably when you are back from Panama, where you're going to go very soon.
Yeah.
Take it into the jungle, see how they perform there. But so far I've been very happy with them, and I just like fast cards, really. Like, I wish my R5 actually had 2 CF Express card slots, simply because I could just write to 2 cards and it would just transfer so much quicker on the computer.
Well, we've been talking all about these components and hard drives and memory cards. To be honest, guys, probably the most important part of your whole computer system, if you're a photographer, is the monitor.
I agree, because if your monitor is not good enough, it's not calibrated, you don't even know what you're looking at when you're editing your images. Like, the colors could be completely off and it might look fine on your computer, but when you send it to other people and they have a calibrated monitor, it might look completely crazy. So having a good monitor is definitely key. Personally, I'm using this ISO CG277. I think I bought it 2013, so it served me very well for a long time. And the thing I like the most about it is that it calibrates itself at night. So every Monday morning it turns itself on, this little thing flips out, it calibrates the screen, and it's always calibrated, but I never have to worry about it. And this was quite important for me. It cost a little bit more money, but not having to manual calibrate the screen was very important to me, because calibration is important, isn't it?
I don't have an ISO screen, but I do have an NEC screen, which is also very nice. And one of the things that makes it really good, a lot of screens, when you run a calibration on it, all it's doing is a software calibration. But the higher end monitors like yours and the NEC actually have the ability to like do a hardware calibration. The actual like LEDs or whatever lights can actually be throttled. So that gives it even more control, and they can get really accurate results. These monitors will be able to display, you know, in the high 90s, if not 100% of the RGB spectrum, which means they can actually display all of the colors accurate. Super important.
Yes, and a lot of the cheaper screens, as you say, they might only display sRGB, so your photos might always look clipped or it just won't look right at all. So calibration is very important, and buying a decent monitor as a photographer, I think, is very important as well. And I think probably ISO and NEC are some of the main ones. There's probably some other ones. I think there's some good Dell ones, some good Apple ones, but you definitely don't want to skimp out on the monitor.
Okay, yeah, and so maybe now we should talk about what programs we actually use on our computers to do all this photo and video editing.
Yes, so I think there's a few different tiers that we want to use. So we want to have a raw viewer, then we might need something that deals with the noise in the images, and then we actually want to have our photo editing program, which is Photoshop for both of us. But for the raw viewing, I like Fast on Image Viewer. I like that it's free and it does all the things that I need to do. And the best thing about it is I can zoom in, I can keep it zoomed in, and then I can use the mouse wheel to scroll through all the images really quickly at 100%. So if I have a lot of images that are kind of the same and I quickly just want to assess the sharpness, that's really helpful for me. I think you're using Breeze Browser, aren't you?
Yeah, I love Breeze Browser. And it's so key to have a good, fast, this is such a bottleneck. Talk about bottlenecks. You go out, these fast frame rate cameras, you take 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 photos in a day, and then most people just have like literally no capability to go through those. So they just kind of pick a few random files out and they edit those and they're like, yeah, that's good enough. That is not the way to do it. If you're gonna spend all that time out in the field, if you're gonna spend all that money on equipment, you need to go through your images and pick the best ones. And if you're gonna do that, you need a good, fast program. Breeze Browser, amazing. Fast on Image Viewer, amazing. Sadly, neither of them available for Mac. So for Mac, you're either going to be using Lightroom, not the best, or Photo Mechanic, also not the best, not as good as those, but it's the best you got. Okay, next up, we need to deal with the noise in our raw files. And as you guys have heard us say before, the best program we know about is DxO. You just drop your files in there and it just cleans the noise right out of them. It's quite amazing.
And once you have those nice clean files, it's time to load them either into Camera Raw or Lightroom to get the most out of your raw files. Glenn and I do that with our Pro sets that we released last week, and highly recommend to you to check them out because they will help you tremendously to transform your raw files into a great starting point for editing with just one click. So make sure to check out our video from last week that talks about the Pro sets, shows you how they work, and check out the link down there in the description.
Yeah, definitely. Like the many people who've already bought them and given us great feedback, we're sure you'll love them too. Once you've converted your raw file, it's time to move into Photoshop. And this is where we're going to move through a certain sequence of steps, obviously different workflows for different people. But if you're interested in knowing about my workflows, you can check out my post-processing ebook. And if you want to know what Yan does, be sure to check out his masterclass video.
Totally, make sure to check them out. We know they will help you tremendously and have already helped a lot of other people. Let's briefly talk about video editing because there's a few different options there as well. The one that I recommend usually to people is DaVinci Resolve, simply because it's free. There are a lot of other programs. There's DaVinci Resolve Studio, there's Adobe Premiere, Final Cut Pro. So there are a lot of different video editors out there, but for me, simply because it was free, DaVinci Resolve was the main choice.
And can we talk, like, okay, there's freeware versions of programs out there, but it is unbelievable how good that program is for a free program. Like, it feels like it should cost hundreds of dollars, and it's free. So highly recommended.
So why don't we talk a little bit about useful accessories for computer at the end? We already covered hard drives, card readers, but there's other things. Like I've recently bought this MX Master 3 Logitech mouse and really impressed with it. It has really improved my workflow. It's nice and sensitive, has the two scrolling wheels. This horizontal scrolling wheel is actually really good for video editing because you can nicely go through the timeline from the left to the right, something that wasn't as easily possible before. And all around, a pretty good mouse, pretty happy with it. Also have the matching keyboard MX Master 3. I mainly bought it for the laptop because it goes or attaches via Bluetooth, so I don't need to plug it in anywhere on the road if I don't want to just use the built-in keyboard, or if I want to have the screen a bit further away from me. That's pretty good. At home I use this mechanical keyboard and I can't lift it any higher because it's actually plugged into the computer. It's very good, very responsive, but also very noisy. So I would probably just be happy with those MX Master 3 keys and that mouse as my main accessories.
Well, I don't have that many accessories. One thing I recently got though was, this is just the box for it, but it's this monitor light from BenQ. To be honest, I didn't even know these things existed, but it's actually pretty cool. I really like it. So it's a thin little light that sits on top of your monitor, and it has this control unit here, and you can control the color temperature and the brightness of it, and just to improve your overall editing workflow. Oftentimes I like to edit photos in like a really dark room, and I find that that's nicer to look at the screen, but then your room is like pitch black and you're like rummaging around for your pen or your glass of water or whatever. And it's nice, it just gives like a nice glow on your desk, and you can still see like your notes or your mouse or whatever, but it sort of creates a nice little viewing environment. So that's something that if you guys are interested, you could check out. I'm certainly enjoying it. And the other accessory, which is a must-have, is some good computer speakers, because whether you're just listening to Yan on YouTube or some nice music, you need some good speakers. So I have some nice ones from Bose that I've had for a few years, and I'm really happy with them. They just, they're designed as computer speakers. Again, they have a similar kind of control unit to this that you control the volume and you just tap it to turn them on and off, and I'm super happy with those. So that's all I have for accessories.
So guys, let us know, what do you think about the accessories that we're using and this whole episode in general? Do you agree with our take on computers and editing systems, or what are you using? What would you recommend? Like always, make sure to Subscribe to the channel, like the video and share it with your friends. And we really hope that this video helped you to get an insight into computers, what we use, and help you save time when you're editing your files and also might be looking at building a new system.
Definitely. And if you really want to save some time, be sure to check out our brand new Pro sets, because those are real time savers in the digital darkroom. And as always, guys, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.
Bye, guys.